Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome. We're really excited. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to get logged in so we can get started. My name is Colleen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Portugal The Place, and really excited to be here today to answer as many questions as we can about moving to Portugal. So the way it'll work is feel free to type questions in, and Fiona, who is managing the moderating the group, will be posting them up so that we can discuss and talk about all the things that may be top of mind for you. So again, welcome. I look forward to answering as many questions as I can and finding out where you're all from and what process you're in considering your move to Portugal. Hi, Wanda. Nice to see you. Hello. Hi, Marshall. Great to have you here. So hello again. Hi, Stephanie. We are really excited to be able to offer these opportunities because we want to just be able to answer those top of mind questions that you have. So please feel free to pop them into the chat. Fiona will be navigating those. Hello, Florida, Colorado. Great to see you here. And Pennsylvania. Hey, Judy, great to have you here. So, and Julie, hello from Washington. So it's exciting to see folks here that I know and that are in the process of moving to Portugal, and some of you that are just beginning your journey. So again, welcome. We are really excited to have everyone here. We'll give everyone just one more minute or so to jump in, and then we'll just start talking through your questions. A couple updates though, while we're waiting for folks to get settled in. There has been a lot of chatter happening right now about the elections in Portugal. We have a snap election happening on March 18th. Here in Portugal, the government is a parliamentary government and they need to form a coalition. If they lose confidence in the government, it automatically goes to a snap election to bring some additional people into the fray and reset the government. So that's where we're at right now. The reason I'm telling you that is there is a lot of headlines happening, as in anywhere when there's an election, lots of things are being chattered about. So if you have questions, if you've seen things that are on your mind, stuff that maybe has been concerning you because you picked up a headline here or there, please feel free to also include those in the chat, because there's a lot happening right now, and some of it is just to get your attention, and other things are things that I would love to share with you and talk about. Also, right now, I know that people are really getting a lot of anxiety around getting their appointments in VFS. So that's something as well that we're hearing. There's so much demand. There are so many people trying to get appointments that there really isn't any crystal ball on getting them or finding a way to work around the system. But one updates that I did just have that I was found out from a couple of different clients is some people were trying to see if they could book a short-term visa appointment and then just tell them they want to switch to long-term. And that is absolutely not working. We're getting people feeding back saying that they were turned away and that they had to reschedule to do a long-term visa stay. So updates in VFS are coming fast and furious. We're getting a lot of information, but the one thing that we are hearing is definitely schedule the appointment for what it is that you're wanting to do. So we've got a lot of folks here online that are coming in, and so feel free to start loading up your questions. And hi again to those up. We've got Ron and Bob in Oregon. I'm Oregonian, born and bred, so it's great to have our fellow Oregonians here. And if you have any questions, again, we'll just get going. So our first question that comes up are, what are the national holidays, celebrations, and cultural events? I love this question. Thank you so much, Caitlin. This is great. Portugal has a lot of holidays. They absolutely love to celebrate and come together. They're very family oriented and of course focused around the Catholic calendar, as they are a country that identifies as a Catholic country. And what does that mean? That means that the national holidays are plentiful. We have national holidays that are similar to the US with the Christmas, Easter, those traditional holidays, but there are additional saints' days that are celebrated as national holidays with days closed. And then they have multiple holidays to celebrate different independence parts of their history. And being the history is much deeper, they have a couple of dates that they schedule and celebrate. One of them is April 25th. That's similar to like a 4th of July. That's when they celebrate when they were able to throw over the dictatorship of Salazar, and that was the Carnation Revolution, which was 51 years ago. So that is probably the biggest, most significant individual holiday. But we have celebrations that we get days off for, like Carnival, for example. So Carnival here in Portugal is the real deal. You will see days off in Carnival. Those dates rotate depending on the calendar where Easter lands, but you will see at least 4, maybe 5 days full of a week where the cities, in some cities, will close down completely. Other areas are a little lighter on what they do, but all over Portugal, they celebrate Carnival. And right now, what we are coming into is we are coming into the festus season. So June and coming through the summer, everywhere, everyone has festivals. Here in Alcobaça, where I'm at, this is the Silver Coast, right smack in the middle of Portugal. We're getting ready to have the Sardine Festival. We just had a medieval festival. We have tradition festivals. So lots of different things you can expect all year round when it comes to cultural events, celebrations, and national holidays. Okay, so Joan is talking about Portugal The Place's DIY visa support. Sure. So that's where you'll work with me and the team, and we will go through checklists. We will make sure that you have the right documentation. We will make sure that the information that you're gathering is what is being requested, and we're keeping our ears open for any changes that are coming up, such as about 6 months ago, maybe more, 9 months ago, they started requiring the FBI reports to be apostilled. We're keeping up with all of that to make sure you have the latest and greatest. So you'll be doing all of the actual filing, scheduling your appointments, pulling the documents, but we will go over the checklist with you, make sure you have all your documents ready, and to be able to look at it and say, yes, this looks like everything that you need to qualify for the visa that you're applying for. The second that it feels like a gray area, the second it feels like an attorney needs to be involved, perhaps the income isn't clear or there's some other element that needs to be explored, we would then recommend you on to one of our partners, as that would be a legal matter and you'd want to have a licensed attorney and immigration attorney review it. But happy to help through the DIY and make sure you're supported and have all the documentation. And then Joan's asking if there's any issues with shipping family heirlooms. No, there isn't. It's definitely, you have the opportunity to ship your heirlooms and family keepsakes over without being charged customs. You have a one-time chance to do that as a person that'd be relocating to Portugal. There are a couple of exceptions. Antique firearms, that's something that has to be handled differently. They do have some restrictions on that. Wine collections definitely have a different kind of declaration that you have to make, and antique motorcycles or automobiles, those also fall into other categories. All right, and so Caitlin's asking, what do most US citizens do with cell phone numbers and plans? That's a great question, and there's not really one version, but for most folks, for the first year or so at least, they usually park their phone number using a variety of services like Google or Twilio or one of these services that they will park that phone number and then have a dual SIM so that you can have your American plan and your Portuguese plan working on your phone. Those are options. Those of us that have been here longer, we've been here 5 years now, we no longer have any phone number at all in the United States. We've let all of that go. And then we communicate with our family and the folks that need us through WhatsApp. We use, it's free, it's easy for everyone to communicate. And then when we do need to call back to the States, we have a plan in Portugal that allows us to make those calls. So it is a transition period, but most people park their number and then use dual SIM. All right, and so we have a question here. The American fascist regime recently appointed ambassadors to Monaco and Malta. Who is the US ambassador to Portugal and who appointed him or her? That's a great question. I know that that's in transition and I'm not sure who the new one is. I'd be happy to look that up and get that information out to you, but it really hasn't been announced yet. And so I'm not sure what the transition plan is for Portugal. And then Stephanie is asking if there's any advantage to applying for the D8 versus the D7. I may continue to do a little work instead of completely retiring. Well, the great news is on the D7, you can work 100% if you still want to keep a full-time job. The D7 just requires that you have provable passive income. That means you have income that comes in without working. So rental income qualifies, dividends off of investments, having a pension, Social Security, those are all considered passive income. So you can work on the D7. There's absolutely no problem with that. That's what I'm in Portugal on. You can start a business. You can do a variety of things to bring and source income. But for the proof for the visa, you have to have passive income. For the D8, the thing with the D8 is that's the visa that was required for people that don't have a form of passive income, so that you can then use either an independent contractor, kind of freelancer type of setup with contracts, or a contract from a W-2 employee. So it really doesn't restrict you from working on either visa. All right. So this is a great question. How strong of a tradition community of thrifting is there? Well, there's a very strong tradition of thrift antique, but it's very different than what we have. They don't really have like the Goodwills and the large kind of industry of thrifting that has developed in the US. Here, people hold on to things forever. You will see people using things much, much longer. They don't have as much of a disposable kind of culture when it comes to things they purchased. You know, the Portuguese for a long time were in very difficult economic situations. So they really learned how to reuse and upcycle and all of those things way before it became trendy. One thing you'll see here is fantastic cobblers that will just repair shoes. People will take their favorite shoes and get them fixed before they get rid of them. Same with, you have a lot of seamstresses here, a lot of people that will do mending and hemming, because people reuse and continue to update what they have as opposed to buying new. So in the thrifting, it's more of like antique and used furniture stores, things like that. You do have some market for vintage clothing, and then of course all the crystal and plateware and all of that, but it isn't as robust. You don't have just rows and rows of shops like Goodwills and things. But it's fun because when you do get into one of these places, it's usually some large old warehouse that just has crazy amounts of things that are, you know, could be 150 years old or 20 years old, and you just have to kind of root through it. One thing I do love is they have antique markets that move around from city to city, and they'll be in the parks, and you'll have all these vendors, and they have everything from record players to 1980s stereos to vintage vases and everything in between. So it's a good place to dig in, but it's different here. So Caitlin's asking, is there a shipping company you suggest? I see most are from New York to Lisbon and take about 2 weeks. We're not sure if we want to bring gym equipment or purchase it there. That's a really good question. We do have partners with different shipping companies, excuse me, that will go and assist you from door to door, no matter where you are in the United States. But it is costly. Shipping items, you know, it is a balance. Do you want to buy when you get here versus paying to send it over? One thing you can depend on is if you have items like gym equipment, you do see a pretty large resale market for gym equipment, like on Facebook Marketplace or OLX, which is a version of like a Craigslist here, where you can get a lot of gym equipment in that kind of used section. So depending on what you're looking for or what you want, there's options, but we do have referrals for that from depending on where you are in the country and partners. But for example, we came out of Oregon and our items went over land to Houston and then went out of the Houston shipping to Rotterdam and then across to Portugal. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set it up and do it depending on where you are and what you have. So Bobby is saying, you just got back from visiting several different areas, including the Silver Coast, as I am seriously considering moving to Portugal. I've been looking online at houses and the pricing seems very close to that in the US. I thought housing was more cost effective than in the state. What is the average cost of a small, say, 2-bedroom home? So a clarifying question, are we talking about purchasing or renting? So that would be helpful to know. Yes, the housing has definitely been growing we'll talk about the sale price of a house right now. We've seen the industry have a marked increase as demand has been going up for inventory, and there has been less and less inventory on the market. It is definitely a seller's market right now. The one thing that I can also tell you is location, location, location. So a small 2-bedroom home that is, say, 10 minutes outside on the Silver Coast of Caldas de Reina. This is a lovely town that's about 45 minutes outside of Lisboa. You can still find really great deals in between the high 195 to about 260 range, depending on the amenities of the property. If you want to be close to the ocean, if you want to have any kind of view or any kind of open space, then the prices will definitely go up depending on what you're looking for, if it's a new build, so on and so forth. But it also depends where you're coming from in the States. It is still considerably less. The prices are considerably lower than California, for example, considerably lower than the Northeast if you want to get an oceanfront property, ocean view property, or a new build. It depends on what part of the US you're coming from, if it feels comparable. But there are still priced properties, 2-bedroom homes that you can get. I was just out today. I was actually scouting out today and saw a really sweet property that had been all refurbished. That was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath that was $188,000. So they're out there. They're definitely available. It just depends on where you ultimately want to land. And then Steve is saying that he's joining my spouse's D7 visa for our relocation. Are there any challenges or issues I should be aware of since I plan to continue working when we relocate? In short, does my visa through him allow me to work and earn money? Absolutely. Yes. That there is no restriction on the D7 or family reunification to the D7 on working. It's just what they use for your income to qualify for the visa. So you should be all set and able to continue with employment. The only caveat is you cannot apply for a job in Portugal with a Portuguese company and use that income for a visa. And if you apply for a job with a Portuguese company, they are expected to make sure that they cannot hire a Portuguese person first before they extend a job to a foreigner. They're trying to protect the job market to make sure that the Portuguese are not getting pushed out of the job market. But if you want to continue working in your existing job, if you want to take an international remote position, if you want to do, start your own business, all of those things completely. It's just remember that if you wanted to come here and try to find a job, first, you'd need to speak Portuguese, but then secondly, the company would need to make sure that they can't find a Portuguese person to do that job before they extend a job to a foreigner here in Portugal. Will it be possible to complete the move by December 2025? I don't know where you are in the process. We suggest people work 6 months backwards from the date that they want to be here in Portugal. That would accommodate the 90 days that it takes to wait for the visa to be approved. That's about the common date. It's taking about 90 days to get those visas back. And so we include 6 months because you want about 3 months to prepare for your visa appointment, have your visa appointment, and then wait about 90 days to get approval to be able to move. So you're getting tight on that. It's crazy to think December 2025 is so close now. We're getting closer and closer. But if you have most of your items ready to go and you have your plan and you know where you're going, then it is possible to still get here by December. All right. So Ingrid, any recommendations on shipping companies? Do you recommend one state over another for virtual mailbox addresses in the US? There are multiple shipping companies. We have a couple of partners that will then go through a clearinghouse depending on where you live. It's very hard to recommend any one because they're so regional and they all have different areas that they serve. But that's definitely something that we can help people source as they're looking for those services. As far as virtual mailboxes, there's 2 states that give you the best support for virtual mailboxes. So that would be Florida, which has a really flexible setup to be able to have a virtual mailbox. And then that's South Dakota. So you have the Dakotas and you have Florida as the places that you can easily create a residency. You have the ability, they have these virtual mailboxes. We used Good Sam. We were traveling in the United States in an RV before we moved to Portugal. And so Good Sam is connected with the camping world, and they handle folks that are mobile, and they did a great job for us. So for us, we had a really great experience with the Good Sam mailbox service, and that was out of Crestview, Florida. All right. So Megan has said that I've heard that commonly housing in Portugal has different insulation, which can mean a very cold winter. Any advice on preparing for that? Is that something we can identify in our rental search? So that's a great question, Megan, and that's definitely something that there's two things that you can prepare for, and one of the things that we're very proud of doing to help people navigate all of this. First, it isn't even just the insulation. The homes here, depending on the years, have different levels of insulation. They built differently depending on how old or new the building is. If you have a newer building that has been built since 2012, they're fully insulated. They have double pane windows. There's a variety of things. The building code has improved, just like everywhere else in the world as technology's improved. It's aspect, because they build out of concrete here. And so concrete is porous and it can feel cold. And so it's really about the position that the house faces, how much natural light, how much ventilation, and it's all about aspect. So oftentimes in the same building, you'll see a big price difference on a south-facing apartment as opposed to a north-facing one, because if you've got north-facing and you're not getting constant light, it will feel colder and damper. So that's something that you can really be looking at, is making sure you're considering how much natural light it has, how much ventilation, bathrooms that have ventilation, that have windows that open, or 24-hour fans that are built in. Those are really important elements. And then making sure the house breathes, because some houses, if they're closed up too tight and they don't have any breathing, any ventilation, that's when you're basically creating a greenhouse effect. So it's a balance about aspect, the proper types of windows, and the ventilation. The great news is the mini splits. Those are the individual air conditioning units that are in each room. Here in Portugal, that's the primary way that they do the heating and cooling. They have 3 settings. They are, when someone in Portugal says it has AC, they don't mean just cold. It's cooling, heating, and then the third setting is dehumidifying. And that really helps air condition the space and make everything feel drier and more comfortable. So Ron is asking, we have a 9-year-old Labrador we want to bring with us. What should we know and be thinking about when it comes to transporting him? He's about 65 pounds. Well, we love it. We love when our guests bring their furry family. We brought over Dutch, who's a Newfie Doodle. He's about 125 pounds, and that was a big adventure bringing him over. And it's definitely something that you can navigate, and there's many ways to do it. The one thing that you really want to be aware of is at his weight, he will definitely have to go in the animal hold on the plane. And the planes are very, very strict right now. They're really aware of the temperature of the tarmac. So when you book your flight and when you decide to travel, depending on where you're from, you really need to think about, as soon as it hits 83 degrees on the tarmac, they will refuse to move the animals due to the threat to their health. So booking night flights, booking out of places, driving if you need to cooler places. These are all strategies you're going to have to think about, the time of year, all of that, because that is going to be one of the most impactful parts of traveling with a large animal, because they can't go with you in the cabin. The other thing to note is there are services that'll do door-to-door transport that will help you with all the paperwork, but your vet, if you're veterinarian, you can ask if they are hooked up electronically to be able to certify for international travel and do all the paperwork that is sent electronically. If your vet can do that, then it's relatively straightforward. 10 days before you travel, you have the inspection, you make sure that they have their rabies up to date, you have that paperwork for the airplane, you have your tickets booked, and then off you go. And then you do the appointment in the airport in Portugal, and then you go through the vet, you give them that paperwork, they sign off on it, and then there's no quarantine. You go right out and everything is set. But it is coordinating, because buying a ticket and making sure the airport works for the temperature, that's definitely something you want to be planning for. Okay, and Alex, what was our reason for moving to Portugal? So we moved to Portugal during COVID and at the beginning, and it was because my company had actually been downsized because of COVID, and I was trying to decide what our next move was, and we basically had always wanted to move to Europe. And it was the first time that I was in a place where I wasn't working in corporate America. And so Clyde, my husband, and I, we just said, what if? And so we sold everything. We did everything virtually. It was COVID. You couldn't go do anything. And we landed here and then learned our way up very quickly through a really unique time in the world where the country was in a stage where all we could do, we couldn't go do anything else. We'd pack a picnic, get in the car, drive, explore, learn our way around, and there wasn't another human being around to be seen. So it was quite an experience moving here during such a period of time, but it was something we'd already wanted to do, but it just kickstarted us to doing it sooner than later. What services do you recommend for learning Portuguese? So there are a variety of ways you can do this. If you're over 65 and you want to get your A1 and A2 certification for eventual opportunity to apply for citizenship, there are free classes that Portugal offers. Also, if you are in a working space where you are going to be doing some type of job where you'd be interacting with the Portuguese, there's also some free classes offered by the Portuguese government. So those are very rigid. They're very strict. You go in, you are on a set time schedule. You cannot miss any classes, but if you attend and you go through the process, you'll be able to have that certification. We also know that that doesn't work for everyone. Everyone learns differently. And so tutors have been really what I've seen people be the most successful with, hiring an individual tutor to start you on basic Portuguese phrases, communication, kind of the things you need to learn right away. And then once you get comfortable there, then transitioning into one of the certification classes so that you can start pursuing the next level of proficiency. And then Diana's asking, there is a pretty hefty tax fee at closing on a new build. Maybe it also covers upfront property tax. What does that cover exactly? So on a new build or an existing build in Portugal, on any purchase of any property, there is a what they call a stamp tax. It's two taxes that are combined together and it totals for 8% of the total sale price. And that is due at closing. So on an existing build or on a new build, that's paid at the end. That does not cover the property tax. That is the one-time stamp tax that is on all the purchases. Now, the really great news is that the property taxes here are minimal at best. They're 0.003 to 0.008% of the assessed value, depending on where you are or what that assessed value is of your property. So the 8% stamp tax that is on any purchase of any home that you want to calculate, when we're working with our guests to help them navigate what to expect on a budget, we suggest you round up to 10% to cover the cost of your real estate attorney, notary, filing, things like that, so that you have a good idea of what to expect at the closing. So that would be taking that tax, the filing fees, and the anticipated cost of a real estate attorney, and that should give you an idea for budgeting. So that's kind of a rule of thumb, is just put 10% onto any sale price that you see for the taxes, fees, and closing. So Jennifer, how do you get an address for a visa if you cannot use Airbnb? This is where you have to have a legal and licensed long-term lease. So anyone that's applying for the visas has to have one of three things. You either have a friend or a relative in Portugal that will vouch for you and will sign paperwork saying that you're going to come and live in their home, and that's called a tour. Or you've purchased a home and the property either has the deed or you have the promissory contract showing that you are purchasing a home that will be available for you to live in when you are moving to Portugal. Or you have taken a legal and licensed 12-month lease. And everyone asks this question. It feels very cart and horse because you're like, why would I buy a house or why would I rent a property before I have a visa? And it's because it's required. You have to have a formal a registered accommodation to apply for the visa. So for folks that are renting, what we do, we'll start backwards from your appointment. So we'll start about 6 weeks before your VFS appointment. And then we will work with you to find that lease. We'll make sure that it's registered, make sure that it's legal, review everything, and that you have proof of registration for your visa appointment, of your deposit, and of the lease. And you will end up, and you need to budget for the expenses of moving to Portugal, about 3 months or 4 months where you will not live in that apartment, but you will have it and you will be maintaining it in your name while you're waiting for your visa to be approved. We all have done it. That's how we've all relocated over here, and that's an expected part of the process. All right. Since it's unsafe to fly within and from the US, can you recommend a cruise line that offers one-way travel to Portugal? That's a tough one. The Queen Elizabeth II, I believe, is the only one that has any kind of sailing out of, I think it's New York right now that's heading over. But from what I understand, they're booked like 2 years in advance, and I haven't heard of anyone adding routes. So I don't believe that's something that, unless you can really plan years out in advance, that would be able to be a choice right now. And then Joan's asking, are there lending library networks that also include books in English? Well, the libraries that you have in Portugal, you can become a member and you can request them to order English books for you. So if you have a list of what you'd like, it might take a week or two, and then they'll get those books to you. But lots and lots of areas where there are a lot of immigrants coming from English-speaking countries, England, the United States, Canada, have set up their own donation libraries and kind of exchanges. And so, for example, in Óbidos here on the Silver Coast, there's a great book exchange. There's ones in Lisbon, up in Porto. So lots of different ways to find them. And then Sandy's asking, considering moving to Portugal with my family in the next year or so, how welcoming and accepting are people in Portugal towards immigrants or foreigners settling there? I'm genuinely curious and want to better understand what life might be like from a social perspective. So that's a question that we have quite a bit, and there are two really important answers to it. One, on a personal level, I have never met such friendly and welcoming people who have welcomed us with open arms and brought us into their community. But it isn't going to happen overnight. Like, we really had to step out of our comfort zone and be the people that went to Christmas parties where we were the only people speaking English and just kind of were there as observers the first year, because we really had to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. People are very, very kind here in Portugal. I have had such great experiences with getting to know the communities we live in. There is a greater question about how the Portuguese as a whole are feeling about immigration. And right now there is a stress level, not necessarily coming from just, we hear a lot of rhetoric and chatter about immigration, and with like people from North America or England, there are people coming into Portugal from all over the world: Brazil, Angola, North America, England, all across the rest of Europe and across East Asia and those different places. It is putting a strain on the systems. And so in general, the Portuguese are concerned that they can keep up with the demand for services. But individually, the people that we are with and that we work with and we spend time with, they have been nothing but welcoming, and they're very curious about getting to know Americans. They really enjoy interacting and speaking with people. We love Dutch. Oh, that's good. We love Dutch too. And we have Aladdin as well. So we can't forget our newest edition. So we have two Newfie Doodles now. So we have a 9-month-old and our 6-year-old. So Ron is asking, how do people continue their prescriptions they were on in the US after they're in Portugal? So what you do is you bring all of your medical records. You want to have them in a PDF printed file, something on a cloud that you can access when you get here. And before you leave, you ask for your prescriptions from your physicians, and you make sure you have them in paper form that you bring with you. After you've arrived, and you should bring a supply of all those prescriptions with you for like at least 30 days, if you can have those all filled. And after you arrive, you go to a doctor. Even before you're on the health numbers. You can go in and for a very nominal amount for a basic appointment to have your prescriptions rewritten in Portuguese, you might pay 30 euros cash pay to go and see a doctor. And what you do is you take all the prescriptions, you hand them to the doctor talks to you about where you're at, make sure that the prescriptions are all in order, and then they will rewrite those prescriptions for you so you can then take them to be filled at the pharmacy. Once you're on the health system, those prescriptions will be in your app and you can actually just go through a process of having them regularly refilled. The first time you just go in and have them converted. It's very straightforward. Does VFS allow you to set appointments in advance next April, or do they just assign the first available date? So VFS is the service that is in the United States with the consulates, and you will go in and you will actually schedule your appointment. They don't assign those appointments. You will schedule it, and they release those appointments in batches. So you could not do next April, for example. It's way too soon. Right now, they're releasing out as far as we've started to hear some appointments in August. So you won't be able to go in and find an appointment that far in advance. You're going to be looking in a 60-day, maybe a little longer window, depending on as they open up new appointments. If you're speaking to the IMA appointment in Portugal, which is the second appointment after you've gone to the consulate in the US, that is one where you may get it assigned when you get your visa in your passport in the States. Or if it is not assigned, then you will need to call and you will just try to get the first available appointment. It's been about 50-50 right now of people getting those auto-assigned when their visa's been issued. Can more than one person be associated with the rental lease? Yes. So couples for sure, both people have to be on the lease. You want to have that for your visas because you will apply separately. They won't have you both come in together. You will both have an appointment. And so you need to be on the bank. Both people need to be on the bank account in Portugal. Both people need to be on the lease in Portugal. You can also have two couples, for example. So if two people or two families were sharing, you can absolutely have the adults in those both couples respectively be on the lease. They will get very curious if all of a sudden it became lots and lots of people, if it didn't fit the house, for example. So if the house is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 2 couples, okay, we could see that working, but not 4 couples, for example. So Megan is asking, my husband and 2 kids are Norwegian citizens, which we believe means they can come to Portugal via EU, EEA freedom of movement, and I can join them as a spouse, mother, possibly under family reunification. Do we need to arrive separately into the country or can we enter simultaneously? You can enter simultaneously, but just know, Megan, that as the spouse coming under family reunification, your paperwork could take a while. It's a slower process, so you might not be able to travel outside of Portugal for a while until that paperwork was all sorted. You're welcome, Sandy. So Cindy's asking, regarding the lease, can it be 2 or 3 friends on the same lease? Yes, it doesn't need to be relatives. You don't have to be related to be on the same lease, but again, the property has to match and show that the people that are on the lease are going to live there and that it could accommodate the people that are living there. So 3 friends, a 3-bedroom, that makes sense. A 1-bedroom for 3 people, not going to make sense. It's going to create a red flag. And it's really important that you don't try to cut corners on the lease. We have a lot of folks that are like, oh, I just want to rent like a studio, nothing. I'm not even going to live there. I just want it for the visa. It's a very bad idea. Not only are you tangled into a legally licensed lease that you're responsible for, and it's a much more complicated process here to get out of a lease. It's not just 30 days notice and I'm gone. It's 4 months notice after you've completed a certain amount of the lease. There's a lot of layers. And then secondly, everything to do with your IMA appointment is attached to that address. They will schedule your health doctor according to that address. Your mail, they still mail everything physically to an address. That's where everything will go. And so we really encourage people to get something that they intend to use for at least 12 months, because everything to do with your driver's license, your health number, your residency card will all be attached to that address. So Stephanie is my husband and I are starting the process of getting a Croatian visa. He's first generation. Once we have that, would we be able to stay in Portugal indefinitely without 2 and 3 year check-in appointments with Portugal's government? So let me just understand, because is he getting citizenship with Croatia and will carry a Croatian passport? Or if he's getting a visa. If he's getting a visa, the EU visas do not transfer back and forth. You would have to have a visa in Portugal to live here, and that would take the 2 year and the 3 year. The Croatian visa would be for Croatia only, even though they're all in the they have agreements with travel. It doesn't cross borders. You couldn't get your visa in Portugal and then live in Spain, for example. If he's a citizen, if he's getting his passport and then you are family reunifying, then that's different. Once he has a passport, then as an EU, making sure that Croatia has all the agreements, then yes, he could come as your EU citizen, live in Portugal, register his address, and then you would family reunify, but not as a visa holder, as a Croatian citizen. And Judy's asking, what does IMA stand for? That is on the Portuguese side, correct? Yes, IMA is AIMI and AIMA, and that used to be SEF. So if you saw things from the past, it used to be SEF. They reorganized and now it's called IMA. And that is the Portuguese Immigration Authority that you register with and complete your residency with. And Ron's asking, what are the travel limits if we want to adventure into other countries in the EU? Well, that's a great question, and it depends on the stage you are in with your visa process. So when you apply in the United States, you're going to get what is called a temporary residency permit. You're not actually getting the full visa there. That is giving you authority to relocate to Portugal to complete your residency. So that is very strict on travel. You have 90 days to relocate to Portugal once that is issued, and then you have another appointment in Portugal. And that appointment can be anywhere from 35 days to 3 months to what is the IMA appointment. The IMA appointment is where you reconfirm everything, you share all the documents again, they do biometrics, they take a picture, fingerprints, and then they issue your residency card. Between the time when you've moved to Portugal and you're waiting for that IMA appointment, your travel is very restricted. You have one entry in that you use when you come to Portugal, and then you have one more in and out that is allowed on that permit. And once that permit expires, if you're still waiting for your appointment, you need to stay in Portugal. After your residency card has been issued, then you're going to be able to travel comfortably across the EU and go on many adventures. We all do it. I'm headed to Rome in June, and we go everywhere. It's one of the best parts about living in Portugal. But you're going to be watching your timing, because you do need to make sure that you're staying in Portugal. You're not staying out of Portugal for extended period of time. So you take 2 weeks here, a week there, 3 weeks here, it's no problem. If you started doing 6 weeks, 8 weeks out and trying to come back in, you're not fulfilling the residency requirements. So if you're just looking to travel and have adventures across Europe, absolutely, completely doable with your residency card. But you cannot leave, for example, and be gone for 90 days, like try to live for 6 months in the States and 6 months in Portugal. That's not allowed. You have to be in country for at least 183 days minimum. So Denise is asking, I recently heard about an expulsion of 18,000 foreigners before the recent elections. Was that a move to expel illegal immigrants? Would you say the country is shifting right politically? So that's a great question. And at the top of the call, I was kind of talking about that. We are in a political moment in Portugal. There is a snap election happening on May 18th. And the 18,000 foreigners were people that did not come into the country in any way legally. And they don't use the words illegal immigrants here the same way, because they don't have the same kind of approach to immigration. They're not looking at people kind of the same way we've been conditioned in the States. What they did is they expelled people that had come in and had no visas, they had no work, they had not registered in any way to start a process to be in Portugal, and they had not complied, and they had some criminal events that had happened in Portugal, things that had put them within the criminal system. That is something everyone in Portugal has been supporting. I agree as well. It is definitely something that they needed to do, because up until about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they were allowing people from all over the world to come in to take short jobs, like seasonal jobs, and they didn't have to apply for a visa till they came to Portugal. And it was causing a huge backup and problem with people on the system, health system, things like that. Now it's required that you have your visa sorted, even if it's a short-term seasonal working visa, before you come to Portugal. So they needed to level set that and get that taken care of. And this is what they've been working on, trying to get this under control. As far as shifting right politically, there was definitely some feelings of things shifting around. And when you talk about right in Portugal, there is a extreme right movement in almost every country in Europe right now, but there's also a lot of different nuances in the political spectrum. You have socialist parties that are central, socialist parties that lean more right, socialist parties that lean more left, and then communists and green parties and everything in between. Chega is the one that has been getting the most attention, but it isn't gaining the traction that they had expected. It is moving on that same thing that we're seeing around the world, this frustration with illegal immigration and with kind of pulling on people's fears. But so far, the Portuguese have been very loud about the fact that they remember what a dictatorship was like. They remember what it was like to live under an authoritarian regime, and they don't have any interest in going back to that. So Erica is saying, I have a passport. Can I meet with your company for apartment tours without having the visa processed? Yes, most people. So we need to do the apartment tours. You need to find and secure your lease before you can go to your visa appointment or have it taken care of to go. It gets a little confusing because there are consulates that need you to do everything before you make an appointment, and there's consulates that let you make an appointment and then you do everything. But either way, you need to have your visa approved lease ready to go when you go into the consulate for your appointment. So absolutely, people come over and travel. They can do it virtually or they can tour with us and we can help you get that taken care of. And Whitney's asking, what areas would be best to live, rent, family of 2 with 2 dogs? We don't want to put a strain on any systems. Well, Whitney, there's a lot of wonderful options in Portugal. Portugal offers so many kind of towns that don't make the kind of highlighted list for tourism that are just fantastic for families. Up in the north, for example, about 45 minutes outside of Porto is a beautiful city called Amarante. It's got to be one of the prettiest cities you will ever see. It's got an amazing quality of life. It's very mellow. The family support there is very robust. And it's 45 minutes from an airport. It's got great transportation. It's just a really wonderful, wonderful place to live. In the center of the country where we are, Leiria, for example, doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's a city of a couple 100,000 people. It has a university, a major hospital. It's fantastic for families. It has, your international schools, and it's very comfortable for people, and it gives a lot of options for rentals. And then going down south in like Torres Vedras, heading down toward Lisboa, heading down around Setúbal, out on the peninsula, there are so many different options. The main thing is that there are towns that don't get the headlines that really do give you a fantastic cultural experience that's really rich for a family where you can just become part of the society and really participate. So definitely lots of options. All right. So we've been going through a lot of questions. I feel like you've had some great thoughts and things that you wanted to cover. The one thing just to understand is that a lot to do with the visa process feels very cart and horse. It does feel like it gets kind of out of order. And so we really encourage, if you have any questions or you want to talk through your plans or processes, just schedule a call. Our calls are free. It's no problem. We are happy to talk through realistically if your plans are going to make sense and work and answer any questions. And also, everyone's process is different. Some people really love the idea of purchasing and coming over and investing and really settling. Other folks are looking at having something that might be a little less permanent and they want to check it out first before they commit. There is no right or wrong way to do this. It's just what works for you and your family. So we really encourage you to explore, check it out. There are great resources that you can go online. One of the things I really love to do is just use the street maps when you're on Google. Just take the little guy and drop him in the blue and walk around a little bit, get a feel. There's some great video work out on YouTube. And then when you have questions, feel free to set up some time and chat with us. We'd be happy to help. So I would just love chatting with everyone. Do we have anything else that we need? I think we are good right now. Again, enjoy your weekend. Bom fin semana. And we will be doing these sessions every couple of weeks. So if you want to log on as many times, just please let us know. The next one is coming up June 2nd. So I will see you all after I get back from England.